Here's another little story of the Little Rebel of the Gap. These are stories my dad told me when he was growing up during the Depression. Seems like if he had no bad luck, he'd have no luck at all. Now these little stories take place in a place called Cumberland Gap. Not hard to find on a map. It's where Tennessee, Kentucky, and Virginia comes together. And this is what it looks like today. Now here's what it looked like back in the 30s. An old picture looking from the pinnacle up there, overlooking the valley. And down below us, you could see the holler there just off the right of center. That's Tipperell, a little community out in Cumberland Gap, where Gap Creek flows through. And this is Tipperell right here, looking back towards the Gap. You can see the saddle of the Gap. Just an old community here. And this is where Dad growed up at. A little old house. They didn't have much. Didn't have much at all. They struggled during the Depression. And they lived in a little house like this. And the Gap was just a sleepy little place, trying to survive during the Depression. Now he always got with his brothers and friends. He's always cobbling around. You know how a bunch of boys are. Here's an old wagon he made. I'm surprised he didn't take it down Cumberland Mountain. I'm surprised. Always cobbling and making something. That's a real picture there. But he did take his old bicycle down Cumberland Mountain. I did make a video on that. Wonder he didn't get killed on that adventure down Cumberland Mountain when the sprocket chain come off, no brake. And his dad worked in the logwood. He would be gone a week at a time. He would come in every once in a while on weekends when he could and check on Mom and give her some money to live on. And they lived hard during the Depression. This is about what the kitchen looked like in the house. He did say they had an old battery radio. But they had a hard time with a house full of kids. He would help out around the house. He would work in people's gardens, hoeing, whatever he needed to do, just to make a little money to bring it home to help his mom. Said he liked to shoot groundhogs too. People's gardens. They wouldn't pay him nothing, but he got to keep the groundhog for the meat. And that was some good eating, he said, when times was hard. But he really loved the creek better than anything. He could fish a little bit, find turtles. He really loved the creek. And when they went in doing too much, him and his brothers and his friends, there's a little water hole there at the creek. They hit it wide open. Loved to play. On these hot summer days, even had their own swing, he said. They'd swing out over the creek. Had a real good time when they didn't have to work so much. And it come a hot spell there one summer. I mean, it was real hot. Even the animals just didn't want to get around. Even the old hogs lay down. It was so hot. Old hot days of summer. And a lot of people tried to cool off best they could. The little ones just getting an old bathtub there, an old galvanized bathtub to try to cool down. Well, the bigger kids, they like to go to the swimming hole. So he'd go around by his friend's house. Everybody had a hard time in them days. They're lucky they had a roof over their head, something to eat. He said he'd get with his friend, go a few houses, and they'd all get together, and they was going to go towards the creek. They're going to go swimming on these hot days. Now, old Cumberland Gap here, the old creek that come out of the mountain, Gap Creek we're talking about, it come out of the old Cudjoe's Cave, he called it. It's called the Gap Cave now. And it come down and on down and on down towards Powell River. Now, he'd tell me that there wasn't a time that you couldn't drink out of this creek. It was 58 degrees coming out of that cave year round. Of course, it warmed up according to what the season is down below it. And they would get in this old water and they'd swim. Well, this particular day, they went down to the water. One of them just jumped on in and swam on across there playing around. And when he stood up, he had stuff black oil all over him, he said. And they got to looking, and the water had a film of looked like just old oil and gasoline on it. You could kind of smell it. Because it was kind of, the water wasn't running good anyway. It's kind of stagnant. So I said, well, we don't want that. This is our swimming hole. So one of them had a good idea. Let's strike a match and burn this off. Well, they did. Well, it started off slow at first, started working. But it kept spreading and spreading and spreading and spreading till pretty soon it was going off into the edge of the woods and down the creek, following the water. And what were they going to do? So one of them took off running. They wasn't far from the gap there. And they got help coming. The old fire engine come out. They was out there trying to get all the volunteers they could there to stop this fire before it spread off into the mountain. And they fought it, and they fought it, struck around. It got to be bigger than what they could handle. And before you know it, they had fire trucks coming from Middlesboro up towards Rose Hill, Virginia, back towards Tazewell. I reckon they had 4 or 5 different fire trucks come in there. But they finally got control of it. Finally got control. Well, come to find out, there's 2 or 3 gas stations there in the gap. And they had old storage tanks there. One of them was leaking. It hadn't been leaking long, but it had been leaking out into the creek, and nobody knowed it. But these boys found it, and when they did, they tried to burn it off. So everything got back to normal, and they got everything fixed and cleared up. And when Dad got home on the weekend, he found out about this. Of course, Dad said he got the whooping of his life. Who struck that match? Didn't care, you was in on it. That's the way it always was. So it seemed like he always had something. But life got back to normal on the gap, back to everyday living. But it seemed like all the little stories you tell me, if he didn't have no bad luck, he'd have no luck at all. So I want to thank y'all for watching. That's just another little story of the Rebel of the Gap. So, hope you enjoyed. God bless, and I'll see you next time.